welcome to Out Loud. I'm your host, Kenny Fitz, and joining me today is Juno nominated singer-songwriter and kind of gift to the world. I'm gonna put that out there because
Wow.
yeah, Francois Klark. Francois, welcome to Out Loud.
Thank you so much. That was very glowing. Thank you.
It's flowing because, and it's to me, the music that you're creating, it's a very deserved. I'm not sure where that came from, but you know what I was trying to say. Deserved.
It sounded like it was sous vide.
Yeah, like too much Master Chef I'm watching apparently. Um, the album, so it's adventure book, and it was nominated for a Juno, and the music has been out there. Pirates has been out there, the latest single, and it is, in my opinion, it's the album I needed when I was younger. When I was realizing myself, I needed to hear this album because it just takes you places. It makes you feel as if you're a kid, but a kid growing into themselves, and a kid growing into themselves discovering love, and a kid growing into themselves discovering love, and that there's a whole world out there to kind of explore. There's so much in here. It's a 9-song album, kind of, front to back, with two instrumental pieces, seven kind of, it's bookended that way with seven,
Mhm.
storytelling, story-based songs that are just gorgeous. So now that I've got
Thanks,
this
Kenny.
gushing preamble out of the way, tell me about, so the album itself as a concept, adventure book.
Mhm.
What's the adventure for you? I know where it took me, but when you were creating this, what was the adventure you were on?
The adventure was like it all kind of started at home, and it was during the time that none of us were able to go anywhere. And within the first 2 weeks of, you didn't know whether you could go grocery shopping or all those different things. I just had the freedom to be able to sit in front of the piano and write without that Toronto guilt of what are you working on? What are you doing? What's your next thing? But it was just a very free environment to be able, with no pressure, explore music and think about things that I've been thinking about. And like kind of what ended up happening was I started thinking about a lot of trips that I've been on, and people that I met along the way, a little bit of my childhood, a little bit of where I am right now. And slowly but surely, each one of these little moments or adventures or something turned into a song. And it was just very cathartic to be able to be in such a free space and really have the time to think about moments in my past and present that I maybe have not spent the time to be able to like sit down and think about and almost enjoy for a second time. Like, I've went through those things and those experiences in real life, but maybe after the trips or after the relationships or whatever, not really having a time to digest them. And now to have this free time to be able to digest them and to put them into little poems or stories and then write them. So the album gradually, like I didn't go into it thinking that it's going to be a Wanderlust album, but then it turned into this very much like Wanderlust album that I wanted to, if somebody listens to it, take them to a different place. And I want it to be a little bit, I want it to be beautiful and I want it to be fun, all in the same space.
It is all of that and more. As I said, it's bookended by two kind of instrumental pieces, which I love. I love that. I love like an opener and a closer. I'm a
Mhm.
real sucker for an album that does what it needs to do with the space that it has, and takes the space that it needs, rather than having filler to, give ourselves, it's like, oh, it must be a 12 song this, or it has to have X amount of number of songs in there. So I love that kind of bookending with the instrumentals. And like I said, they're from two different places, Guatemala and Mexico. And was there something about those two places? Was it something that was recent, or that you wanted to kind of really concentrate on those two places and take something from?
Uh, Guatemala was just, one of the first places that after I started paying back my student loans and I had a little bit of money, it was like the cheapest flight
What?
to go from
You paid
Canada to
back your
Guatemala.
student loans? Oh my God. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Oh my gosh, it was hard work. I'll just say that. But no, it's like at a point where I really wanted to see the world, and most of my money, like I spend whatever I made at the time to be able to go visit my family in South Africa. So that's where I'm from. Mom's still there, siblings are there. So whenever there's a little bit of money, I always used to go home. But then for the first time, I had like a couple $100 that I could do something with. And I just literally Googled what is the cheapest flight from Canada and where is it cheap to be? And Guatemala was one of those places. So that was a pretty special trip for me because it was one of the first trips where I kind of went into the world and explored by myself. And it was such a life-changing trip. And so hence like the one, like a lot of, you get, I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of the album is kind of set in South and Central America and Guatemala, all these different places. But the reason for starting the album with that instrumental piece in the beginning and the instrumental piece at the ending was, you know, uh, nature is like one of my biggest muses. And in this specific record, the sun kind of plays a big role. So, the rising of the sun, daytime, the setting of the sun. So it just kind of worked out that opening theme at the ending theme to me is like such magical times of the day when the sun comes up and when the sun goes down, you have golden hour and all that stuff. So having these two pieces to kind of, paint this picture of sunrise and sunset, and then with all the stories in between.
It is okay. So I have to say, there is no, not okay. I guess I'm saying this wrong. Every song's a standout to me on the album. There's nothing that makes that's not a standout, and they're all standouts for very different reasons. So if you get to bedtime stories, there's jazz influences definitely in there because you're hitting the piano a little bit differently on that track.
Yeah.
You're getting some of that infusion, that jazz infusion. There are 70s road trip nostalgia pieces over this album. And I don't know if you intended that or were listening to anything, but for me, who's a kid who grew up in the 70s, there's so much in there. I don't know if you know Boy's Life or Boyhood, that
No.
movie. I was like instantly thinking about that film, and I was thinking about me as a kid, and there's elements in there that I was just kind of like, oh my God. I'm like, I needed this so much. I needed to have this music when I was a kid. Because it just took me right back. So that
Right.
being said, was that unconscious? Was there
The
elements?
70s thing was definitely not intended. I'll say
Okay,
that.
that's a me thing then that I'm picking up on, that there's, or at least there's something that kind of makes me go there, that makes me think of that
Yeah.
road, makes me think of those. And I guess it probably is that adventure and where you're at the time, and where you've been, and some of the
Mhm.
travel that you've done that has to be coming out of it. But it really kind of took me there. But the jazz that's in there, I love that because it's kind of like wedged, it really comes out really wedged in the middle of the album. Is jazz a big influence for you? Because I mean, piano is one thing, but not necessarily always jazz.
Right. Well, so okay, I moved from South Africa to Canada to study music. For one, like South Africa is so far from the rest of the world. Like if you're in music, um, it's really hard to get from there and incredibly expensive to get from there to Europe or North America. So when I went to school for graphic design first because that was like safe bet in South Africa, third world country. It's a fairly safe bet. Music wasn't an option. And then my dad immigrated to Canada, and he said, "You know what? You've always kind of wanted to be in music. It seems like people are actually making a living here. So you should, come and check it out." And so, um, I, I had Berkeley in the back of my head, like let's go to Boston, whatever. But international fees are just crazy to study in the States. And so somebody like my dad told me, people are talking about Humber College. You want to come check out Humber College, see what it's like. And so I ended up coming for an audition at Humber College after, like this was during my first and second year at university back home, I kind of started listening to Jamie Cullum and Diana Krall and Nora Jones, you know, kind of like the jazz artists that kind of went mainstream and, you know, ended up on most of our plates. And I was like, oh, I kind of really like this. And I knew that the options were, if you go to music school, it's going to either be classical or jazz. And so came to Humber, jazz was the answer. And so my academic training is in jazz and vocal jazz, more particularly. So I do have a love for jazz. I won't say that I'm like the biggest jazz head. There's a bunch of people that I listen to this day, but I'm by no means a jazz piano player. But bedtime stories, for example, just like it's kind of like pop chord structures in the sense that it's the same chords that just repeat over and over and over. So it's not like a jazz standard where it's like chord substitutions all over the place, and you know every other bar is a different chord and it never repeats. And so in this, it's just a couple chords, and some of them is just like a little more saucy than a pop chord would be, but it follows that repetition of a pop chord to make it a little bit more palatable for, for the audiences.
It turns the album. It kind of, comes along and then flips the album. Fuego, when it kind of comes in, it really sets that tone of the adventure's beginning. And it
Mhm.
is that opening kind of salvo into the music, and then you follow it up with Pirates, and which is a phenomenal song, and I love it. That anything that references tequila and having a good tequila night is my book.
And you know what's funny? Like I am not at all a big drinker. I'll have one drink and I'll be like, oh, I regret that so much. It's like biggest headache.
Talk a little bit about Pirates, because it's the single that's been out there that people are getting to. I feel like people know you from a few different ways. From Run, especially with the video, there was a lot of attention around that, and then of course Netflix. I mean, please, Netflix and the movie and that piece that's in Feel the Beat, choreographed by Mia Michaels. I mean, come on.
I know.
Atmos,
What is life?
right? Right? I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So that in itself, I feel like people do know you and have been becoming to get to know you. But I feel like now it's more of a, oh yeah, we've heard, there was those pieces, and now it's kind of like, yes, now I must know all of the things. With Pirates, how has that reception been for you? Was it surprise? Was it a surprise? I mean, Juno for the album, and then Pirates itself, just it seems to have taken on a love affair all on its own.
Um, you know what? It's kind of interesting. You never know what's gonna land. Like you might think that this is gonna be the single, that's gonna be the single, whatever, and you release them the way that you want to. Um, but it is absolutely wild how a larger audience will kind of just pick a song out of the hat that you did not expect. Off of the previous record, it was Always, that was in the Netflix film, I think in large part because of the film. But, you know, in retrospect, that was the song that I spent the least time on. That was, okay, last day of sessions. I, at that point, like didn't feel super comfortable, like playing my own songs on piano, but that was the one song where I was like, you know what, I'm the only one that know this. Let me quickly play it. We'll record it. It was live off the floor, acoustic. Spent maybe 3 hours in the studio recording, doing 6 or 7 takes of the song and then picking the best one. And then spending thousands of hours on the rest of the tunes. But then Always was the one that like the broader audience kind of gravitated towards. And then with this record as well, you have your plans with what you think you need to push, but then if after the record's been out for a little while, everybody kind of just picks for themselves what they want. And it seems like Sailing is one of those tunes, and then Pirates, another one of these tunes. And I love it. I really, really love it because, and I think kind of like how you were just saying how you're getting 70s vibe and it takes you back to when you were a kid. I love that I write something and my intentions behind the song is this, and this is the story behind it. But then somebody else listens to it and listens to that song from the perspective or through the lenses of their life, and all of a sudden the song has a different meaning to them, and therefore they maybe gravitate toward this song because now it has taken on a meaning for them. So you can never predict this stuff, but it's lovely to see how people respond to specific things.
I will say that, I mean, like I said, there's no to me there's all the songs are standout for different reasons. My favorite has to be Beautiful Universe. It is it's the one I go to every single time. It
Right.
makes me feel good. There's so many elements in it that just make me smile and make me feel warm. That song really
That
makes me feel warm is what I would
it
say.
makes me so happy that you love that song because that is the one song on the record that to me hits the closest to home, and then for some reason also just feels like a breath. And um I don't know. I feel when I listen to that song, I feel loved. Also, maybe because it came from a moment where in that moment I felt seen and loved, and I wrote the song about that moment. It was like this is back to Guatemala, so back to that same trip. And I know you didn't ask about this, but I'm going to go into the song. Is that okay?
My God, of course.
Okay. So I visited a couple places across Guatemala, backpack. The main reason why I went was to go climb Acatenango and Fuego being like the first trek on the record. And one of the last stretches of my trip was from a little beach town called Rio Dulce, and then you take a little bus from there to Tikal, which is in the north of Guatemala, where the pyramids are. And it was on that trip. So in Rio Dulce, there's not a lot of tourists, and I didn't speak a lot of like my Spanish still sucks, but I spoke even less then than I do now, and so I just knew enough to ask which bus goes to, and so eventually somebody pointed me in the right direction, and I got into this little bus, and as I sat on this bus, like nobody got onto the bus, and then we drove to a small town, and then at this town it just all of a sudden filled up with like so many different people. There were chickens on the roof, like that typical thing. It filled up so much that the door was open, people were hanging out. And it was a moment in this bus where there was a mom and her two kids sitting right across from me, so you're kind of facing each other, and so they were sitting across from me, and then there's like a granny and a grandpa and some, like just people from all different walks of life. And there were a vendor selling mangoes through the windows and all these things, and everybody had like a little bag of food or something that they had brought with them. And I was the only person on the bus that looked the way that I do, that didn't speak the language. But what really struck me was how caring everybody everybody just wanted to make sure, are you good? Do you want to, you want some of my food? Like everybody was so giving and so wonderful. And even though there was this massive language barrier, everybody, like still you could just tell people cared and are interested and wanted to chat. And so in that moment, I kind of realized, well, we're so different from each other. Like our cultural backgrounds are so different from each other. Our age, we're all in different age groups and whatever. Yet in this moment, I can see a little bit of my mom in the person that's sitting across from me, and I can see a little bit of my brother and my sister in the little two kids sitting beside her. And so kind of just noticing how, in spite of how incredibly different we are still related in the sense that we're somebody's brother, we're somebody's sister, and so on. And so this idea of beautiful universe that kind of started coming, like how incredible, I sound so cheesy, but how beautiful all these things and all these relationships, and then just hitting home. And I think this is my thing in life, like the most important thing in life, and the reason why I think that we're here is for relationship with each other, like whatever those relationships look like, with us chatting with the person at the convenience store, or your partner, or your family. I think the relationship is the reason that we're here. And beautiful universe just kind of like wraps all of that very nicely, and therefore that song means a lot to me.
You feel free to slice that cheese because it is a very grounding song. It really is. When you listen to it, and I think that's what struck me about it is that, as you get older, things perspective changes, and the things
Mm-hmm.
that are important to you change, and the things that you thought were important to you are so
Yeah.
inconsequential
Yeah.
that, the whole concept of, first of all, musically and sonically, it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful song. But then you take
Yeah, it's very self-indulgent, you know. It's like all the production elements and performance elements that I just love in one spot, like get acoustic guitar, string section with a little bit of pop influence.
it's gorgeous, like full
Oh,
stop.
thank you.
It is. But then what you do is you hit it with those lyrics, and like I said, it makes you feel warm. It's like a big hug. It's like a big hug of love. And as cheesy as that might, I'll carve off.
Yeah, you know.
Um, it really is, because I think that sometimes, and I mean, I don't know, I'm not writing songs, but I do know artists struggle sometimes to get that in there without it being, I guess, sounding too forced or anything like that, and they struggle with it. But where this is just
Mhm,
basically, it's so grounding, and it's spot on. And it is the song for
mhm.
me that I keep going back to on the album, where I'm like, that's the one that if you take them all away and you say you can only keep one, that's the one I'm keeping. Uh,
You can have it. It's yours.
all right. um,
Yeah.
so I'm glad that that you have that space. You had that space and that a moment and ability to be able to create something like that. Because I think as an artist, you maybe sometimes don't get a lot of moments like that where you can just be that self-indulgent and then deliver something that's
Mhm.
so it's just gorgeous. I could gush for days.
Ah, thank you so much. Yeah.
So the album is out. It's been out for a bit. It's had the Juno. How is what is that feeling like? And I know, I'm sure everyone has asked you this. I'm not the first one to ask it, but I'm just curious from talking now about coming from South Africa, and I work with so many artists in South Africa. The radio show
No
itself
way.
is on the only LGBTQ radio show, a radio station in South Africa. So I
Yeah.
them, and I'm constantly coming into contact with artists, and they've said the same things that you have. Um, but coming from there, and coming in and going to Humber College in Canada, and doing your thing, and then boom, you're in the same category with some maybe slightly known names. Uh,
Oh my
what does that
God.
feel like, and what does that do to you in terms of, I guess, expectation? Because we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves when things like this
Yeah.
happen. But also just kind of, yeah, the head spin of it.
Uh, I think the biggest takeaway for me was, and I think the moment that I found out that the record was nominated, I was with my family at the time. I was visiting in South Africa, and I was with my sister and my nephew. And as soon as it was announced, because my publicist Carrie, loveliest woman on this planet, um, she said, you should probably tune in because they let me know that they wanted you to be there, but I know you're in South Africa and I know you can't be there. But we can't definitively say that you are nominated, but I don't, they wouldn't ask you to be at the nomination announcement. It's kind of weird. I don't know. Just maybe tune in. So I tuned in, obviously. Yeah. So I tuned in with my family, and obviously not expecting anything. But then seeing that the record was nominated in that moment, like I definitely overwhelming emotion and a couple tears. But mainly I think because as an independent artist, there's so many days where you just kind of feel like I'm not doing the right thing. I'm such an imposter. At any moment, anybody is going to find out that I don't know what the heck I'm doing, that I don't really know how to write songs, or um, and so you feel like a lot of times you're like, okay, next year I'm going to update my qualifications, and I'm going to get a 9 to 5 and get that pension and live that very secure and stable life. I've done my part. And so I think in that moment, finding out that the record was nominated was kind of like an exhale and a relief, because it kind of felt like the industry and my peers are kind of just like tapping you on the shoulder and going, you know what, you're doing something right. Keep going. So I think like that was my takeaway from the Junos, was just, you know, you're doing something that's in the right direction. maybe don't stop.
Absolutely don't stop. My gosh. The Neverland kind of quality of the album, it's kind of a perfect package, right? Of everything that's kind of happened, and it's, everything that's kind of come and has now set you up. So I guess the next question would be, if this was the adventure book now, what's the next adventure?
Um, I'm taking like a little bit of time, not to, I would like to work on another full record because I'm just, from that generation that likes to work on a full record. But at the moment, I'm kind of focusing on writing a small little EP. There's a couple vocalists, female vocalists that I absolutely love in Toronto and like a couple different places. But and so I've had this idea of writing a slightly more like staying within the sound that I've developed, but leaning a little bit more over to a pop production side. Not that this previous record kind of like hints at that and kind of leans into it, but maybe just tipping a little bit more into more like center lane pop singer songwriter, and then doing duets with all these female vocalists that I really love. So maybe just 5 or 6 songs. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now, while simultaneously trying my hardest to find a booking agent and booking gigs for the summer so that I can take this adventure book record on the road and play as much as I can over the next 2 years. So that's kind of what's happening at the moment.
That's a good plan. And listen, I am going to crawl, run, skate, whatever I have to do to be at a live performance, because I envision what that could be like. And I think that as your career kind of carries on, it's just going to become more and more dazzling, because I'm like, I get gushy.
Oh,
Gushy. I don't mind being gushy. At heart, I am
yeah.
such a music fan. So when I see somebody kind of just excel in such a great way, I get excited. So but that's me.
Ah, that's thanks, Kenny.
I have to ask that, if you is there a dream, I guess, place to, like, performance wise, that you would, love to be at? Like, I know that with independent artists, it's always about, I just need to play, I just need to kind of get out there, but there's always that dream.
Right.
What was it for you? What is it for you?
Like a specific venue
It could be,
or
or it could be just a moment that you've, like, I'd love to have that experience.
right. Every single time that I write, and as I'm working on the production of every single song, so as I'm going, okay, this is this string section, this is this kind of percussion, this is this whatever, I immediately think about what the show's production would look like. And so in my head, I have this massive performance at the Royal Albert Hall. And I see the symphony orchestra on stage and the whole string section, and I see the band and the person controlling the computer and running tracks. And so like I see that entire, and then just the lighting. So that I think is like that has always been a dream. For some reason, I think I saw it started with seeing a performance by cinematic, oh my gosh, why can't I remember their name right now?
Because you're
Cinematic.
in a conversation and you feel like, now you
Yeah,
should.
the pressure is not on. Why don't I want to say cinematic orchestra, and I'm going to watch this interview back and I'm going to go, you nut. That is such a how could you forget their name? Anyway, but I saw a performance of the band whose name I'll remember in the future. And it was at Royal Albert Hall, and it was just spectacular and beautiful, and such an incredibly beautiful regal space with beautiful lighting, and then the string section and all that stuff. So I think ever since then, Royal Albert Hall has kind of just been like stuck in my head, and that is a performance that I would love, love, love to do in the near future.
I would love to see two things. First of all, there's a cinematic kind of quality to the album, because it is a bit larger than life.
All right.
Film scoring, is that something that you've ever looked at or that you would consider? Is that kind of, now, I mean, you're in Netflix in a show, but I'm thinking about specifically for a film or series, I guess at this point in time. We
Right.
too much.
It's always been a dream of mine to write songs for something like Disney movies, or that kind of world. I'm slowly kind of just figuring out my way how to get into that world. That I would love to do. As far as composing just instrumental stuff for film and TV, not really, but writing songs for film, yes, 100%. Like stuff with lyrics that has story, but that is kind of rooted in that cinematic world, 100%, yes.
Disney, if you're out there, you need to knock on the door. This is the opportunity. I would love, the second thing is I would love to see this album as a stage show. Oh my God. I could just I think I would fall over. It would be such a beautiful stage production. I think the music fits for just a great visual on stage. I think it would be incredible. So I may manifest that
But
in the
right,
future.
well, I heard know some people at Dance Halifax, so I don't know. I don't know
Shockingly so.
if
Listen, Francois, this has been fantastic. Like I said, I gush because I am a fan, as well as somebody who wants to know the backstories. I can't wait to see, because I think that Juno 1 is just the beginning. Not that awards are the end all and be all. It's just that
right. Yeah.
I think it's the start of what's more to come, and I'm excited to kind of just see it all and be that person in the corner with my sign going.
And I would love to meet you in real life if you are there.
It will happen. You may be scared, but it will happen.
No, oh, that was, actually, like, that was another thing about the Junos that I loved. It was there were a couple media outlets and journalists that kind of have been walking a road, and that's just always been so supportive, that were actually at the red carpet, and it was so nice to meet everybody in real life. So
It's
one day.
COVID really made it easier, I think, for people like myself, because I'm like, I have no shame. I don't care. I'll ask anybody to talk to me. And even if they're way out of my like reach, I'll be like, hey, we should just chat. And they're like, who are you, weirdo? But COVID did that for us in a sense that allowed us to remember that the world, even though it is a big place, we are people and we are just people.
Yeah,
And
there you go. 100%.
to connect with one another, and we should be connecting. It's how we educate ourselves.
Yeah.
It's how we grow and we learn, right? So
Yeah. I think there's such a level of being scared to talk to someone, and taking that first step and just saying, hey, what's up?
what's the worst that could happen? They run away from you? Oh well. Yeah, you know what?
Yeah, you're strong enough. Yeah.
I'm tough enough. I'm like, I get you. I'd be afraid to.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you so much, and I'm excited for all of it. And I hope that I hear about live performances this summer, because I'm just gonna
And
put on my running shoes and here I come.
that would be amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kenny. I really appreciate it.
All right, so if you're out there and you're watching this, remember, go get the album. It's called Adventure Book. I like to gift it to people because I think it is brilliant. Check out the song Pirates. Check out, if anything, my God, go to YouTube and check out the acoustic from the floor versions of the song, of all the songs on the album. You have to do that. I should have said that a long time ago, but I'm saying it right now. Go do that too. All of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kenny.